Hey fans, this is Doug Kenney, founder of Movie Maker Doug 55. This next video that I'm uploading is an interview with former NASCAR team owner Ed Rensi of Team Rensi Motorsports. First of all, I want to say as a heads up that the video was very impromptu. The phone chat was impromptu, which means I was ill prepared for it. And, what happened was it was originally scheduled for Sunday, but Ed Rensi and I decided to do it today. He called me out of the blue suggesting that we do it right away, and, it's nothing wrong with that, but, you can tell from my emotions that I was ill-prepared. So before you decide to, hit a dislike or something, or comment some, criticism, please take into consideration that, it was out of the blue, and sometimes you have to go along with it if you want to do a good interview. I did the best that I could, and so let's enjoy my phone chat and conference with Ed Rensi. Thank you. All right.
What are you doing this for?
I'm doing this for a motorsports project that I'm working on. The project is basically an ebook documenting the history of NASCAR, sports car racing, and IndyCar.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have a passion for motorsports?
Yeah, I do, and it's literally my all-time favorite sport ever. I remember many years ago when I was kind of growing out of the SpongeBob SquarePants phase, of my life, I wanted to follow a sport. But, I tried looking for some with football and basketball and baseball, and they didn't click with me. But when I found myself hooked into racing, that did click with me.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And I hear that you were the owner of McDonald's as well as Team Rensi Racing, right?
Well, I owned a NASCAR race team called Team Rensi Motorsports.
Ah, Team Rensi Motorsports.
Right, and McDonald's was one of my sponsors for a while, but my primary sponsor, and that was actually paid for by McDonald's suppliers.
Oh.
McDonald's did not pay for that.
Ah, that's really cool, man. So yeah, that's really cool.
That's very common in motorsports.
Ah, so yeah, I have a list of like 30 some questions about your racing career that I'm hoping you have the answer for, if you don't mind.
I'll do the best I can, but I've been out of it for a good while.
Yeah, it's been years if I remember reading right. All right, so my first question is, where are you originally from?
I grew up in Ohio, eastern Ohio, in a town called Hopedale, Hopedale.
Ah, Hopedale, like Dale Earnhardt.
I suppose so.
Yeah, because you get it, it's Dale in the name.
I got it.
All right. So yeah, what made you get involved with the McDonald's company?
Well, I was going to college and I needed a job, and I decided to leave college. And I walked out of the university office at Ohio State University in 1966, and there was a big sign in the window at this place, and I went over and applied for a job, got it. Turned out to be McDonald's, and I worked there for the next 32 and a half years.
That's really cool. Was this around the time that Ray Kroc owned it?
Yeah, he owned. Well, he was a majority shareholder from 1953 on.
Ah, cool.
I'll tell you what, when the company went public, then the stock was sold on the open market, so he was no longer the majority owner. But he still had a lot of stock.
Ah, cool. Yeah, I remember when I was in elementary school, I had to do a project on Ray Kroc. And I didn't just do a project on him, but I had to imitate him as if I was Ray Kroc himself as part of the project.
All right, let's keep going here because it's pushing 8 o'clock here in Illinois, or in Florida.
All right, so My next one is, what made you get involved in motorsports?
It was just not unlike you. As a young kid, my mother took me to a speedway, which was a dirt track, quarter-mile, called Grabbit Speedway.
Ooh.
And I just always loved cars. I think it was probably a period in our nation when automobiles post Korea and everybody was getting into the big sin cars. And I started driving at a very young age on a farm, driving tractors and stuff, and I just like cars. And I really love the competition because you can race forever. I mean, it's just
yeah.
In fact, I sat here this morning before the sun came up and watched I wasn't able to watch the Talladega race, but I videotaped it, so I watched the race on television this morning, probably about 6 o'clock.
That's really cool. What got me hooked to it, or what got me hooked to cars, was seeing the classic cinema film Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. That's where I first learned about motor racing, because there's an intro about it, you know.
Right.
So yeah, were you involved in Bill Elliott's race team when he was sponsored by McDonald's?
Yes. I lobbied pretty hard in McDonald's with the marketing department to market in NASCAR. And most people in Chicago really weren't interested in motorsports, particularly NASCAR, because their perspective was it was a southeastern United States country hillbilly kind of a thing. And I started talking about the fact that in 1949, they raced a NASCAR race in Chicago football stadium, Soldier Field. And then later on, they had the convertible series that was raced there. And one of their Hall of Fame drivers lived in Elmhurst, Illinois. And there were a lot of dirt tracks around Santa Fe Speedway, Rockford Speedway, and others. Virtually all the county fairgrounds in the Midwest had dirt tracks with late model dirt racing. They'd do it during special events, fairs, and things like that. And it was a way to optimize the tracks where horse racing wasn't being used at those facilities. Part of the county fairs has always historically been horse races and horse shows and stuff like that, because county fairs were all about farmers being able to come together and celebrate agriculture. That's really the larger genesis of motorsports comes out of that kind of thing. So I got started because my mother was a gearhead.
That's really cool, and I can probably say that my mom and dad are kind of gearheads too. Yeah, they know a little bit about cars and all that as well. So yeah, that's pretty cool, man. And what was working with David Donahue like at the Glen in 2001?
So let's back up a little bit because I didn't finish telling you about Bill Elliott.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
When we got involved, when I finally got McDonald's convinced that we should do NASCAR, the big pushback by the marketing department was that it was expensive and that it was violent. So I actually got some footage of a hockey game where McDonald's had sponsored the hockey stadium and had the arches around the inside of the stadium. And there were these two hockey players beating the daylights out of each other, standing next to this McDonald's sign. I said, you tell me what's more violent, car racing or hockey. I said, if we can afford to do hockey, we can afford to do motorsports, because that's a big chunk of the United States culture.
Yeah, and
so then the question was, who were we going to sponsor? And the question became, well, we could do this team, that team, or the other team. So we started with Junior Johnson.
Oh.
And I said I'd rather be the second team of Junior Johnson than the first team of all the losers, because he was such an icon. If you're going to start, you might as well start with somebody who's going to give you notoriety.
Yeah. And he's
so by the time we actually got around to racing at Daytona for that first season, he had changed the drivers 3 times. and we ended up with a kid by the name of Hutch Strickland, and he was a nice man, but he was not that good a driver.
Yeah.
And then we ended up with Jimmy Spencer, and Spencer was a crazy man.
Yeah, he was known as Mr. Excitement, if I remember right.
Yeah. So when we went to the Brickyard, the inaugural Brickyard 400 race, I told him and Junior that day that we were leaving Junior Johnson's Motorsports because it just wasn't getting the job done. And then that's when Bill Elliott started his own team with his brother Ernie building motors. So we then went with Bill Elliott because he had he's a great race car driver and he had good name recognition, so it helped McDonald's establish itself.
All right. That's pretty interesting. And yeah, there was a period for a number of years where I was a hockey fan, but I kind of lost interest after Todd Bertuzzi had his incident with Steve Moore. So that kind of lost me interest in hockey. But yeah, that's really cool that you got involved in racing, especially with a guy like Jimmy Spencer.
Well, he wasn't my first choice, but when you hire a team to be, you're going to sponsor a team, you can't run the team. But to keep this in mind, too, before we did that, we actually sponsored Larry Miller in drag racing.
Ooh.
Out in California. And not Larry Miller. What the hell was his last name? It was Larry Minor. Larry Minor.
Oh, Larry Minor.
Yeah, he was a potato farmer. And then we left him and went with Joe Gibbs. And we sponsored Joe Gibbs' Funny Car and Top Fuel Team with Ed McCullough and Corey McLenathan and Cruz Pedregon. We won. In fact, we also aligned with Jim Yates in the Pro Stock car. And so all three of our cars won the championship one year. We won Pro Stock, Funny Car, and Top Fuel.
That's really awesome.
Yep, it was an interesting time. But
yeah.
Motorsports is a very good marketing opportunity.
I agree.
You got to have the right fit. You got to know how to activate it to track and things like that.
Yeah.
Let's keep going here. We could talk about motorsports for the next 10 years.
Yeah, I know. We're both very talkative about and passionate about our sport. That's really cool. So yeah, what was working with David Donahue like at Watkins Glen? Because wasn't he Mark Donahue?
Yeah, that was Mark Donahue's son. I, in fact, talked to Roger Penske about it before I hired him. I just wanted to get him in a car. If he wanted to drive, there's no question he was a better driver than the equipment we had. But we actually kept him and put him in our truck series.
Ooh.
And he was driving a Craftsman truck for us for a while. He is a very, very intelligent young man, very, very scientific, reads the tracks very well, had great computer skills. And frankly, he would have been much better off as an automotive racing engineer than a driver because he was really smart, very capable, very pleasant, really a good guy.
That's really cool.
When I finally got a hold of him, he was a little bit too late in his career to really be able to learn. Because in today's day and age, if you're going to have a great race car driver, they got to start driving when they're 5 years old in mini karts and stuff like that. And it's a skill set that you got to have because when you age out so fast, by the time you get to be 40, you're useless as a race car driver because your reflexes aren't as good. You got a net worth that you don't want to lose. Drivers start worrying more about what they're going to lose than what they're going to gain. And so,
okay.
He was at the end of his career, but he helped us a lot, and I loved working with the kid. He was a good guy.
Okay.
I never met his father or anything because he died at a very young age. But I talked to Penske about him. I said, "Would it be okay if I hire the guy?" He said, "Of course."
Because Mark Donahue was Penske's first star before Tom Sneva.
Well, yeah, but the fact of the matter is, Penske and Donahue were partners in Formula One.
Yeah, that says a lot.
He got killed in Austria when a tire hit him in the head.
Oh, I didn't know that it was because of a tire hitting him in the head.
Yeah, you ought to look up to look up his story and read that and educate yourself, because it was a real tragedy that happened, and he didn't die right away. He was conscious for a good while, and nobody thought anything was wrong with him, and then bam, he was just gone.
Oh, I'm gonna have to look. I'm gonna have to look that up, because I knew it was a crash, but I didn't know it was a tire specifically.
Yeah. Well, my recollection is it was a tire hit him in the head.
Yeah, I'll have to look that up. And
he was sitting on if I remember correctly, he was sitting on the pit wall, and the tire came off of somebody else's car. Verify that, because I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, I'll have to do further research into that. Yeah. How did you get involved with Boris Said and No Fear Racing in 2008?
I just needed a road course driver.
Okay. And he would be the guy who
said. And then I inadvertently purchased the No Fear motor coach for my motor coach. It's the first motor coach I ever bought.
Oh.
And the person that owned it was a woman, and her husband, and they lived in Phoenix, but they actually lived it was her bus.
Oh.
Motor coach. And she lived in Hawaii pretty much, and he lived in Arizona pretty much, Phoenix. Oh. And he never took care of the thing, so it was a mess when I got it, but I cleaned it up and fixed the air conditioners and some other things.
Oh, okay. What was your reaction when Boris Said got wrecked by Ambrose in that race?
If you're going to be in motorsports, get used to it. I was pissed off. It's expensive.
Yeah, I bet.
What are you going to do? It's just the way it is. And those guys don't hesitate to wreck each other either. Keep in mind, you're dealing with cubic dollars, so they can talk about sportsmanship all they want to. But if you watch that Daytona race, there was a lot of payback going on in that. Race.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, it's tough to say whether wrecking is, right, and I don't personally believe it is, but, that's just something.
Well, these guys do pay each other back.
Yeah.
You just get used to that, and it's stupid, it's not sensible, it's dangerous, but those cars have gotten to the point today in NASCAR, all of them actually, are so safe. It's amazing how safe they are these days. Yeah. I'd rather wreck in a race car going 200 miles an hour than in an airplane going 50.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. And were you involved with Boris Said's ride with Jimmy Means' team at Watkins Glen, or no?
No.
Okay. I kind of noticed it on Racing Reference, where for some reason Jimmy Means' car lists you as the owner, and I was like, that doesn't sound right.
That's because I used his number to get in the race.
Oh.
I didn't have enough owners points to make the race.
Oh, so that's where that is. All right. Yeah. Now that makes sense.
Back in that day, if you didn't qualify, you could get in if you had enough owners points.
Yeah.
I didn't have the owners points, and I had sponsors, so I said, hey, let's get hooked up together. And he said, okay.
Okay, now that makes sense. Yeah. What was it like being in Montreal in the rain at the 2008 Napa 200?
Wet and cold.
Yeah. And what did you tell Boris after he was able to finish 5th in the No Fear Ford?
Never said a word to him. I was gone.
Yeah.
Well, the fact of the matter is, when you own these teams, I had a job to do. I was working and stuff, and so I had to get the hell out of there. So okay. There were a lot of races I left early, and some of them I never even went to because of that.
Oh, okay. And what was working with Ron Hornaday like?
Well, he was an outstanding race car driver, but he was a throwback. He was a guy that he was just rough and tough. Just a good guy.
Yeah.
Good race car driver. Actually, when he won the championship in the Truck Series for Earnhardt, I bought all those trucks, and that was the genesis of the beginning of my race team.
Ooh, cool. Yeah, Ron was one of my grandfather's favorite drivers because he was sponsored by Napa, and my grandfather worked for Napa.
That's usually the way that works out.
Yeah.
What's the next question?
Next one is, what was working with Bobby Hamilton Jr. like?
Well, he was a very, very good race car driver. And he was a pretty petite fellow. He wasn't very tall. But he was mentally very, very tough.
Ooh.
And he was an outstanding race car driver, and he pretty much did whatever we asked him to do. And when he made the move to cup racing, I told the owner that hired him, I said, do not hire him. It's premature. He's not ready for prime time. Give it a couple of years, and don't get confused about the fact that he won a bunch of races for me, that he's going to win races for you, because I said he's not going to do it. And the guy that took him was from the IndyCar series.
Cal Wells.
Yes, and he thought he was going to come over and teach these NASCAR guys how to race.
Oh.
And I told him 15 times, I said, you know, Penske's been at this a long time, and he's won all kinds of IndyCar championships and sports car championships, but he never won a championship in NASCAR and hasn't even run very many races. I said, it's a different ball game. Don't think that technology is the same, because if IndyCar racing is plastic surgery, NASCAR is a mugging in an alley. And so Cal Wells hired him, paid him $3 million or something, which was absurd because I was only paying him like $250,000 or $300,000.
Oh.
But he took him. Well, shit. He couldn't get out of their own way because he was way past his experience level. But he was a good kid. He worked hard. Our crew chief was outstanding. Harold Hawley was just an outstanding crew chief. Cal Wells hired both of them the same day.
Oh.
So I had to start all over again. And actually, that was the beginning of the end of me wanting to be in NASCAR, because I discovered that nobody has ethics in motorsports. So.
Oh.
You know, when the contract's up, they go for the dollars. They don't care about how good you've been to them in the past. And that's the reason why Hendricks and Penske and Childress and all those guys are doing so well, is because they got so much money that you just can't compete with them, because they can buy stuff that you haven't even heard of yet. And they can go to wind tunnels and stuff. And Roger Penske built his own wind tunnel. It was a 3/4 scale thing.
Oh.
And I just, you know, you can't compete against that. And unless you have, you know, like Hendricks and Penske. Hendricks, for example, has, I think, over 1,000 car dealerships now. And Penske, he's got an empire that's probably worth $50 billion. And it's just, you know, you just can't compete with those guys. They just outmoney you every time. It's going to be the ruination of motorsports in the country. And I think you're already starting to see it in NASCAR.
Yeah, I remember that back in 2007, you know, there were like 60 drivers or so that tried to qualify for Daytona. And nowadays we're struggling to get a full field in.
Well, what they did is they listened to the drivers too much.
Oh.
And they confused noise with demand.
Oh.
Okay, we're going to have to hurry up because I got to go help my wife with some stuff.
Okay, then would you like to reduce the rest of it to just one more question then that's important?
Okay, go ahead.
All right. Who is the best driver between Mario Andretti, Dan Gurney, or AJ Foyt in your opinion?
Michael Schumacher.
Oh, Michael Schumacher. I never took him into consideration. Yeah, he's definitely one of the best.
I think one of the greatest race car drivers that ever lived was Mario Andretti during his time. But the cars today are so much more sophisticated. The engineering is so much more sophisticated. And the reason why I say Michael Schumacher comes to one single point. Michael Schumacher could drive in the rain better than any other Formula One driver that ever lived. He just had a great skill set in that regard. In fact, there was a movie that just came out. Barbara, what was the name of that book, Learning to Drive in the Rain?
Oh, the one with Kevin Costner?
Yes.
I just saw that movie with my mom.
Oh, Racing in the Rain. Trust me when I tell you, the commentary that the dog makes using Costner's voice, when he talks about when you race in the rain, that you have to let the car talk to you. And let the car go where it wants to go and don't fight it. Well, Michael Schumacher had an incredible ability to drive in the rain, and he brought that same skill to the dry track. And it's a horrible tragedy that he had that skiing accident, because he would be just awesome today. Now, I got to tell you, this Hamilton kid out of England that's driving for Mercedes, he is no slouch. And I'll tell you another great driver. When I say this, you're not going to really probably get it as well as I do. But I think one of the greatest drag racers that's ever lived was Ace McCullough, Ace McCullough.
Oh, I've heard of him. Yeah.
Ace McCullough had incredible eyesight. Ooh. And he had a great lead from the line when the green light came on. And he told me, I actually was in a pro-am with him, and we won a trophy. He told me that he concentrated so hard on the light that he could see the filaments start to glow. And the minute it started to glow, he would take off.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting.
And I'll tell you what, and he had an uncanny ability to do that. I don't know how he did it, but he was phenomenal. So there's all kinds of great race car drivers in different disciplines and different eras with different equipment.
Yeah.
And I don't think that you can say that one driver was the best of all time. I think Benny Parsons was one of the great race car drivers.
Yeah.
Fred Lorenzen was another one. So when you look at race car drivers and how great they are, you got to look at them in the context of the years they raced, the equipment they had, and what the rules and regulations were.
Yeah.
These drivers driving today are a whole different breed of cat.
Yeah.
I think Jeff Gordon's got to get down in history as one of the best drivers ever.
Yeah, and I would also.
Dale Earnhardt Sr., you'll never find a better short track driver than him.
Yeah,
he was an outstanding short track driver. Rusty Wallace was a great driver, but he failed. He could have been the best driver ever, but he had a bad attitude. He was too damn arrogant. He wasn't humble enough.
Yeah, if I had to pick another driver that I think will be one of the best ever, it would probably be Kyle Busch.
Oh, there's no question. If he could get his temperament under control, you wouldn't be able to touch him.
Yeah, and I consider Busch to be one of my favorite drivers ever. I don't defend some of the times that he let his temper get under control, but, I think he has gotten better over the years, because a few years back...
Wait a minute. Just stop a second. He doesn't get paid to keep his temper under control. He gets paid to win races. His whole goal is win. He doesn't give a shit what you think.
Yeah,
his goal is to win.
Yeah,
you don't need to endorse his temper, penalize his temper, consider his temper. His job is to drive a race car.
Definitely.
And I can tell you, some of the greatest chefs in the world are flaming assholes, but they cook good food. That's all you need to know.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to go. How about sending me a little bit of bio on yourself, where you're at, what you're doing, why you're doing all this, so I know more about you.
All righty.
Because I'd like to talk to you in the future about motorsports.
Definitely, and I'll definitely leave it open for us to chat again in the future. But yeah, tonight I'll send you a little bit of info on who I am so that you know what you're participating in.
Okay, take care.
Take care. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Alrighty, that turned out well. Alright. He gave me some advice that I never considered when talking about drivers. You know, I might need to use some of his advice about Brad Keselowski or Joey Logano, I guess. Because, you know, he's, in the end, he's right. These drivers are paid to win. They're not paid for their temper. What I was trying to tell him was, you know, about Ron Hornaday and Busch going at it. But, you know, it is what it is. He gave me advice, and I'm just going to learn from the veteran. That's the way I look at it. Well, thanks to all who joined me in my impromptu interview, I should say. I was very ill prepared for this, but next time when we chat again, I'll be prepared. Thanks to everyone who joined me. Thank you.